All right, welcome everybody. It is August 17th, 2021, and this is the Cloud Custodian Community Meeting, the public meeting that we have every week with the Cloud Custodian community to go over all sorts of stuff. I've put the URL to the notes in chat, and if you're reading this on the internet, we make sure that we link to those notes either in the YouTube description, and you'll end up on our GitHub page with all the notes to the past. So we have an agenda for today. First, we're going to do introductions and announcements. So first, we do introductions. If it's your first meeting or you haven't attended in a while and you want to say hello, now's your chance to say hello. This is obviously optional. So I'll just go first. I'm George Castro. I work at Stacklet. I'm a community manager here for Cloud Custodian, and I help organize things like this meeting and all sorts of other stuff. Is there anybody else that wants to say hello?
I'll go.
I'll say hi. Oh,
Oops.
Who's going?
Sorry.
Let's have Eric go first.
Go for it.
Hi. I'm Eric Hansel. I work at Metadata Solutions. Obviously, I know AJ from working there as well. And I used to be on a different team, more of a release engineering role. And then after some time, I needed a career change. So I moved into the cloud team, and they're using this tool. So I'm just finding ways to learn it. And AJ reached out and invited me here. So thanks again, AJ, for everything, and it's good to see you again.
Awesome. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Eric. Thanks, AJ, for getting him to come on over here. My name is Liz. Pronouns are she, her, and I am a developer advocate at Stacklet, reporting live from San Francisco.
Awesome. Anyone else want to say hello?
I don't want to say hello, but I'm going to say hello. My name is Misha. I also work at Metadata, and I also know AJ, who also invited me, and good to be here. Hi.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. If you want to follow along the notes, I usually share those, and as we have the meeting, I just type them as we go. So first, I have a few announcements. I want to get some events out of the way first. So first of all, Cloud Custodian Day is coming. This is the day before KubeCon/Cloud Native Con. And you can click there, register to attend. Attendance is free. It's both physically there in LA, which is still happening, I think, and virtual as well. So we have a plan if KubeCon ends up going hybrid or virtual, we'll be doing that. And we also have a call for papers happening that ends at the end of the month. So if you're using Cloud Custodian, in any kind of clever way, you want to share some best practices with the community and things like that, we highly encourage everyone to submit a CFP, and then Liz, Umair, and I will look at it and hopefully put together a schedule of awesome content for everyone so they can check that out. Also, a reminder, since we've had some questions, you do not need to be registered to KubeCon to attend this event at all. I know some people might or might not attend KubeCon depending on the cost. So this event just happens to be co-located in the same city, really close to where KubeCon and Cloud Native Con are, but it is a separate process. So you don't have to pay any actual different fees or anything like that to attend this. This is a purely standalone event. Does anybody have questions about Cloud Custodian Day? That's going to be, let's see, what's the dates on those? Sorry, Governance is as Code Day with Cloud Custodian, not Cloud Custodian Day.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, if you click through it has all that stuff, and it has a little schedule here. The CFP closes at the end of the month, and then we'll announce the schedule on September 1st, and it has all the goodies here. And if you have any questions, you can ping myself, Liz, or Umair. Anyone have questions about that one? And then, of course, we have the Cloud Custodian 101 workshops. We're doing these once a month. You can come here and register for those as well. And if you click through, let me just give you an example. I wanted to show everyone the drop down just in case, because I know it can be confusing sometimes. But you just follow that, and then you should be fine. Where's the drop down on this one? Here it is, right?
The drop down is not. Yeah, this is the last one of the series, so we need to start a new series.
Oh, okay. Are we doing that? Do you have an updated link, actually?
This is the same link, but we don't have a schedule because in October
Oh,
there's
okay.
Cloud Native Security Day, and November, December will be off, right? So,
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
All right, so those will spin back up in a minute. So let me just update the notes, and then do we know when they're going to resume again?
Probably in November, depending on the schedules and
Okay,
vacation.
I'll just put that in the notes there. Resuming in November. Okay. Any other event stuff going on that anyone is aware of? Umair, do you have anything to add, or?
No, I guess the biggest thing is if you could sign up for Cloud Custodian Day, join us. And I know there was some questions around that. Do you have to be part of KubeCon? While it's co-located at KubeCon, the entry is not based on a KubeCon entry ticket or something like that.
Mhm.
And we would love to hear talks from end users. So if you have some, please submit. If you have ideas you want to bounce off, I'll just type in my email. Just send me a note, and I'll be happy to schedule a 15-minute call to help you craft that up.
Got you. Okay. All right. So moving on, rest of the agenda, regular weekly doc sprint sessions. This is where on Fridays, myself, Liz, and Carl kind of hang out on chat and try to do a pull request on fixing little things in the docs. We try to do that once a week to kind of learn how the process works and things like that. Unfortunately, I'm in Michigan and I lost power last Friday, so I was not able to attend. Liz and Carl, did you have a chance to meet? Anything for the group?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, we met and we talked about how I believe it was, and I have notes, and I see that you're also in here, Carl. But I think we talked a lot about how the documentation around, and I think
I think it was around execution mode and regarding CloudTrail mode and how some parts of the documentations are spread out. We got repeated information spread apart regarding Lambda modes. I can paste in the chat the examples that we got from, but we took note about that mostly. And regarding execution options on Lambda, that we don't have any examples. So how to set up the letter queues and logging for Lambda. So I think that's the way to go ahead on the next meeting.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Liz, if you have the notes, if we could just whack in some like major points there or something.
Yeah.
This Friday we'll figure it out.
Because I believe what kicked off this conversation too was the one about adding. I don't think I was there for it, but adding delay, right? And that was one of the things that you can include as part of that event mode.
Yeah, that's my catch up. This Friday I'm planning on adding notes for the delay while you all structure the notes, and then we'll go from there. But we'll figure that out. If anybody in this call is interested in joining us, feel free to ping me, and I will send you all the information that you need. We're basically just hanging out every Friday, finding a place of the docs that needs help, and then just making little fixes here and there. And then we plan on doing that every single week to just help the project get better over time. Any questions on this? All right, first thing to agenda. AJ, I think this was yours, 6821, AWS add interpolation to the KMS key tag action. Is that you?
That was, yes, I added that one just because I think this has come up before a couple times in issues, just the whole idea of fleshing out some of the, making the ability to have more dynamic tags. I don't know if anybody on the call has any particular needs for this or opinions. I think one of the things that has come up for adding, what were we trying to interpolate? I think it was pulling resource details into the tag, where if we match on a specific, I think it came up with flow logs, if I recall, something else, where you match a specific resource name, or there's some piece of the name, and you want to grab a piece of that and then set a tag based on it. Just support for a little bit more dynamic tagging, and we don't support anything like that now. Kapil may be able to correct me. I think GCP does, and with AWS we don't. But this could be a big change. I just don't know. I don't know where we want to go with this. good place for a call.
So Azure and GCP have some notion of interpolation where you can basically take a resource value and use it as part of the tag value. That is currently shared between GCP and Azure. It does not exist for AWS. For AWS, it means switching out from bulk tag API calls on the basis of something that this type of customization existing and devolving back to individual API calls per resource, which can be a significant differential, but I think this use case has been heard enough that we should try to at least enable it.
Yeah. Okay. And for this specific issue, it looks like he's looking at using now, which I know we interpolate in some actions. That one I think we could still go bulk with, right?
Yeah. Now should be trivial. I was more thinking about like the use case that I've heard a couple times in various channels about. I just want to have a tag value from the resource attributes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess so would we try to then bulk tag where possible and then support the optional resource attributes and switch over to the individual tagging just as needed there to preserve API where we can?
Yeah, effectively we need I would look at it, I think the perspective that would keep the code change minimal is just changing the batch size on to 1. Effectively, if we're doing resource tags, or sorry, doing resource attributes as tag values.
Or ideally, batch everything based on the set of tag values that you're applying, right? So you can still do bulk on those that are the same. You just have a generic, that's bucketing mechanism.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Rebucket based on tag value. If there's any commonality between the two, that would be a nice optimization.
That's true. That would still end up working through universal tag then, right? Because it would just be universal tag with more buckets.
Yeah, effectively. And I think in both cases, we're not talking about changing universal tag. We're just talking about sourcing tag value. And I think Todd brings up Todd or TJ? Sorry, I forgot what's your preference.
Todd, thanks.
Cool. I think we can, if we group the values, then we can make the batch size. There'll be an additional loop because right now we do uniform batches through the whole set of resources. In this cases, we would have separate batches and have to batch the batch, so to speak. And in the worst case, the batches are size 1.
Okay, there's also some idea, I guess, also from this issue about how the content, the way that you format when you're doing individual tagging versus the universal tag is a little different. Is that something that we should try to make consistent, or is that okay and just leave it as is?
You mean like the tag array type of thing? Sorry, the tag.
Yeah, saying the content of the tag variables. And you know what? I asked George thank you, George, for putting this in there. And I meant to go review what the differences were between tag and universal tag, and I didn't. So I actually don't know what's different.
As far as I mean, I also have not reviewed that part of the code recently. But as far as I know, the main difference would just be tag may have some additional legacy variants, but from a functional perspective, they should be roughly equivalent.
It's also per resource. Some resources or some actions have extra interpolation variables that they support, right? Like the S3 buckets have some things where you can.
So individual actions do, like set logging on an ALB has a bunch of additional bags of variables. In this case, at least for the resource tag capability, it would just be injecting the resource tag itself, the resource itself into it with some ability on doing a JMES path expression to extract that value and potentially to set a missing value on it. That expression turns up nothing. Yeah, I'm not like the extension around the particular actions for variable interpolation is, I don't know that. Sorry, I'm not sure where you're going with that. What was the consideration?
I think I was just thinking that there's, depending on what you're doing, there's a different set of interpolation values that you can use. And I suspect that maybe even some of those resources that where you're not doing any specific interpolation, it doesn't support things like now at all, because we don't do any interpolation, right? You just provide a value. And so maybe that's where some of this inconsistency is coming from that is mentioned here. I'm just brainstorming, I'm not sure.
So now there's a couple variables get done at a policy level, and now is one of those. So it should work universally across the whole shebang. And that top level interpolation is actually has some awareness of the action level vocabularies around interpolation, so it can pass those through. But almost all of the top level variables, like all the top level variables, should work universally, and that includes now. We also have some extended date formatting around now that allows for date arithmetic, which is probably not documented, but I'll leave that aside. But yeah, now should work universally. It's mostly just some actions have extended vocabularies, which that top level interpolation accounts for and passes through.
Okay. Any other opinions on this?
So I can dig up the code that we're talking about, because sometimes that's faster or easier for common shared understanding.
Okay, cool. I'll leave a little spot here in the notes if you wanted to plop something there. All right, moving on to the next topic. Moving this meeting to a bi-weekly cadence. So we had 2 short meetings in a row. And unless anyone thinks otherwise, I feel like we can move to every other week for meetings. So, you know, we kind of have less arrows, but more wood behind each one, I guess is the saying. Anyone have opinions on this? Seemed like a no-brainer for a lot of folks here. All right, I'll go ahead and adjust the schedule accordingly then on the calendar. And just as an FYI, the way the calendar works for the meeting is if you join the Google group for Cloud Custodian, you'll automatically get the invite to this meeting and all the changes and things like that. So I apologize ahead of time for the adjustment span that you're about to get. All right.
Oh yeah. LinkedIn for the exact place in the code where all the top level variables are defined.
I see it.
Cool.
I will snag that. All right, and with that reminder too that we do have time set aside at this meeting for demos and things like that, and AJ has graciously volunteered to do our first demo. So, how you looking there, AJ?
Yeah, I think we're doing okay. I'll try to share here.
Okay, let me stop sharing. There we go, and I'll fix the notes while you do your business.
All right. So do you see my screen and hopefully a VS Code window? All right. Can you also read it? Are we zoomed in enough?
Going up one for the sake of the video or 2 might be a good idea.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So that one's good. Okay. We go
Even more.
Through. Even more? Oh boy.
I'm an old man.
All right, let's see if we can make it bigger. Okay. Is that suitably big?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yep. Cool. So this, the whole idea for this demo then came out of some questions that we got in Gitter about when people are working on policies, how they can see where what a given the value filter takes a James path expression. And just for reference, I'm going to pop some links in here to the chat for context, because I don't know who's going to come along and look at this. So the AWS CLI, Azure CLI, Custodian itself, and the value filter, there are a lot of places where you have JSON data, you have nested data, and you're trying to run these big type James path expressions against it to perform pretty deep matches. And when people are getting started with those filters, or even when you're not getting started, when you're just working with a pretty gnarly filter, you want to keep working on that and keep focusing a little bit at a time against resources that you already have. So I just wanted to go through a couple quick ways that you can do that. And I'm also curious, anybody, feel free to jump in with questions or with your own ideas on the fly here with how, when you're going through building up filters, how you do it. Because one way, let's see, one way that I would do it here is I'll usually start with something like I'll just run a policy with no filters at all. And I got filters all commented out. Let's say I've got I'm filtered to 2 roles here. So I have a couple roles, and I might look at roles that come back and say, I think the question we got in Gitter was trying to look for specific principles under the assume role policy document here, the trust policy for a role. So you can see that that information is multiple levels deep here. So you run a policy with no filters first, and you can see the kind of data that you're looking at. And then from there, it's a matter of just scoping down in there using the James path syntax. And one thing that you can do is just start trying to filter. Let's see. Right here, we've got the all the data here. You can just try to add filters here and build them up a little bit at a time and see what kind of matches you get back. If you get comfortable enough with the James path syntax, then that's probably okay. You might do fine with that. There's a James path CLI that you can run against your output. I'll pop that link in the chat as well. James path CLI you can run against your resources.json and kind of explore some of those some of the filters. So if you just give it an @ it'll give you all the resources that are in there. If you give it a couple brackets, it will it'll flatten down and start pulling some things out that way. And then you can keep digging a little bit at a time and see the kind of stuff that you get back. So you might start and say, I want to look at the assume role policy document, and you'll get that back for each entry in your file. And then you might look at the statement. And each time that you're running through the CLI, you can get a little bit more focus with your query. And then by the time you have what you need, you get rid of this little first part, because this is you're running against the whole set of resources. And whereas in Custodian, you're going resource by resource, so you can do the rest of it. And that'll help you build up a filter. But I find that can be, the JP CLI can be pretty useful, but it's also, you can end up getting into a bit of a wacky loop. So in the Gitter channel, again, probably a couple years ago, Kapil mentioned, hey, there's this tool out there called Visidata, and it's pretty neat. Just kind of an offhanded comment. Hey, it's pretty neat for looking at resources from your Custodian policies. So data.org. JP term. I don't know JP term. See, we got new tools here, but so this may all be moot, or we can add JP term to it. There may be other ways to do it. JP term sounds vaguely familiar, but Visidata, I can go pop into an output directory and pull up some resources, and then I see the nested data with one resource per row, and there's no way to obviously get to run James path expressions against these, but you can. But I did add, and I'll put a link here. I thought, how bad would it be to write a plugin to do this? And it's really not bad. If you have put a little bit of a plugin there for VisiData, then you can do something like, well, let's see, assume role policy document, and just create a separate column in your sheet, and just look at what you get out of that. And each time you'll see the expression as the column heading, and you'll see the results in there. In here, this is going to be a list. So you say, oh, there's a list, there's principles in here. So maybe I'll add something else and add a principle. And each time you think, oh, well, now there's AWS in there. So you can keep kind of iterating on that. Let's go here. Iterating on this here and come up with what you're going to get back. So here there's a root, root in there. In this one, we've got 2 principles in the trust policy, and here's a wildcard. So for the person who was acting getter, he said, well, how do we find out where there's a wildcard in the principle list? He said, well, now we've got this whole James path expression here. We know there's going to pull back a list, and we know there's going to be a wildcard in that list. So then that you can use to build into, you can build in that as the key of your filter and intersect it with a list that just has that wildcard. And it should, and it filters down to just the one role. If we refresh, it's just this one trust everybody. And I can dig in and see there's the wildcard in there. So I'm happy to talk through this with folks, make it make more sense. If anybody has questions or other ideas, I got to go look at JP term again. Does this, oh, and Kapil just linked JP term, that's great. Go look at that. But the whole idea here is between the JP CLI or just exploring with your own intuition, or VisiData plugins, or JP term, just getting that cycle of, I have the data I need, I have it locally, let me explore some expressions to find the values that I actually care about.
Awesome. And I've got all those links in the notes. Any questions?
I'll just comment that similar to this, I just intend to take one of the resources I want to narrow in on, and I just cut and paste the whole thing into gmespath.org in their UI and do there, because it's real-time updating. As you edit your expression, it'll change stuff, but it's not necessarily, if you give it an invalid expression, nothing changes in your output. So it can be confusing on whether or not you have a valid expression or not. But that tends to be where I start. So similar idea, right?
Yeah, not everyone's comfortable pasting their data on the web, but JMES Path Terminal is effectively that same experience locally. It's effectively that interactive style live. It's like a 3-pane view where left hand is source, right hand is like results, and top is basically your expression. And as you type the expression, it auto does stuff, and it has that same issue as far as not doing anything if the expression itself is invalid.
Yeah, well, that's good. This is exactly why I wanted to talk about it at a meeting, because I figured other people would have different ideas on it. One other thing that I wanted to point out here is that the value filter does some nifty stuff that I think a lot of times people are asking about because they're not really sure what's going on under the hood. And something like when we do a tag : name, that's really a simplified thing that from the James path side, these two filters are kind of equivalent. We're saying like, let Custodian do this transformation, this lookup under the hood to look for a bucket with a specific name tag, or you can just go right into that tags object yourself. It's just a pretty gnarly expression to get there. And usually you wouldn't want to do this, but we had a question through either GitHub issues or Gitter a while back. How can I tell if my bucket's name tag matches the actual name of the bucket? And that was one of those cases where we could do it with a filter like this. It's just pretty awkward. And a lot of times when when you're writing a pretty awkward filter, there's something other than the value filter that can get you there. So that's and also some of the other filters add their own annotations to a resource, which you can then use the value filter to look up. So there's a lot of little things that we can go into more on other demos or other questions. Oh yeah, Kapil just said the same thing. If the expression's too complicated, then yeah, if it's common enough, we'll just make you not have to type that.
Ooh, good. Maybe an interesting topic for the doc sprint, for the weekly doc stuff. I don't think any of those annotations are actually documented. Like so different filters have this notion of annotation where you say cross account role and it adds an annotation so that typically either for reporting purposes or for actions to do remediation, they can take some action. But what those keys are for the purposes of users also using them in their policies is particularly clear because they're not documented.
Sounds good.
I'll also note that I think it was a security group filter or something like that I helped figure out how to solve for somebody who asked about it, where you were trying to figure out, I don't know, God, this was too long ago. But I ended up using JMES path and doing counts of matches and then comparing that with another section. So the result of the JMES path is either a true or a false on whatever criteria you're looking for. So all the logic was really happening inside of JMES path, and Cloud Custodian was just evaluating whether it was true or false. And so sometimes you can do some advanced stuff with that instead of relying on Cloud Custodian to evaluate your values some intelligent way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like JMES path, has functions, has a lot of pretty interesting capabilities. It's actually built into both the AWS CLI. So if you do -- query on the AWS CLI, you'll have JMES path. Ditto for Azure, although I think they have I think it's the same field. But you can do functions like counts. You can do maps, projections, lots of different things. It's definitely a cool language. And definitely worth a look. And a key part of something that Custodian exposes as its workhorse for users on policies.
Yeah. Good call. Well, thanks. I think I'll hand it back to George, then we can continue rolling.
All right. Any other questions for AJ? While I go back and reshare. All right. Moving on to some pull requests. There are two that I have on the agenda today. AJ, these are yours, I believe. 6837, make normalized tag a universal tag action.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one I mean could be worth discussing here just because it is changing the way that action is going to make it more to be a universal one, so it applies to more resources. I think we had and this is where I'm curious about the feedback from folks. We had a normalized tag action. It had the schema said that it supported a replace sub action, but it didn't seem to do anything, I guess, because people would just use rename tag instead. So I'm kind of stealing that replace effect here and trying to have it do a regex replace. I don't know if this is the right way to do it, or if somebody has better ideas, different ideas, or how this feeds into some of the other tagging work that's going on.
My only thought is normalized tag has, say, a couple different notations. And right now, this is fairly focused on value. And I think there's been use cases around key, but that wouldn't necessarily be in this action. But yeah, I think it's maybe worthwhile to take a step up. Like, it doesn't have to be part of this PR. Like, I'm just thinking, like, on a project basis, like, maybe it's worthwhile for us to take a step back, take a step up, and be like, what are all the different use cases people have around dealing with tags? So and making sure we actually cover off on them. Rather than trying, what we have been doing is effectively piecemeal targeted stuff based on an individual use case. But I feel like there's potentially some stuff like tag key normalization and other things that would be worthwhile if we went up a level, looked at all the different use cases, and just try to identify what our hit list and roadmap are for it.
Okay, is that something that's worth like thinking about and coming back in a couple of weeks because we've got a few different things in progress, or?
Yeah, it is, okay. It is, but I think it's a useful exercise, and also is worthwhile to make sure that these things are lined up to where we want to go directionally. But I don't want to tie them as a strict dependency, but I still think it's definitely a useful thing. Because it may inform what we merge. So I wouldn't want to like have a release of this stuff out per se. If we potentially realize that we just did this and this, then we don't have to have a concern for users as far as policy compatibility.
Mm. And I'm assuming this would also cover 6807, just this one here. Renaming the tags based on priority list of source keys.
I don't even know what that means.
Looks like they're just consolidating.
Priority list. Got it.
Yeah.
Just got it. Yeah, I totally know what that means now. Okay. No, that's not that one. I think is pretty straightforward. Although, again, like if we're actually looking at it from that holistic perspective, I mean, is really what we're saying there just tag normalize?
That's how I was looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's all under the whole either normalize keys or normalize values, and then how do we make all of that stuff work nicely?
Yeah.
All right, so that seems to cover that. Anybody else got any PRs or burning issues?
At least for this week, my hope is to get to the GCP IAM policy thing and Patricia's code pipeline application PR. Those are the two PRs on my hit list as far as a reviewer.
Okay. Anybody else got any burning issues or PRs before we close up? All right, that pretty much finishes it up. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll be publishing the notes and everything onto the list as well as the YouTube video. And with that, we'll give everyone 15 minutes back.
See you in September.
Yeah. Don't forget to register for Cloud is Governance Day. Cloud Code is Governance Day by Cloud Custodian. I am never going to get that right. I'm just going to call it Cloud Custodian Day, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers, everybody.